Hello, I'm Ciaran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode, we bring latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. In the current episode, I'm joined by Dr. Frank Campion to discuss the importance of getting ewes into the right condition at joining. We discuss the factors influencing condition and manage tin ewes separately, and culling those ewes that failed to improve in condition prior to joining. We finish up discussing the carryover effects of ewe condition at joining on the productivity of the ewe in the following season. We start off with Frank outlining how to assess condition, what it equates in terms of live weight, and the time needed to increase ewe condition.
We talk about conditions go right throughout the production cycle from one end of the year to the other, but probably the most important time to talk about is now, because we're 7 to 8 weeks out from mating time. We know that if ewes are in poor body condition score at mating time, you're going to have a lower pregnancy rate, you're going to have a lower litter size. And we also know that if your ewes are thin at mating time, it's going to be harder to put that condition on them for later in the year when they really need it, and that is at lambing time and on into early lactation. So the time to start getting the ewes in correct condition score is now. And if you have a ewe in the correct body condition score going to mating, well, you're only managing her for the rest of the year just to make sure that she maintains her condition up to lambing and that she has condition to lose after lambing. But if she's thin at mating time, you're already chasing your tail. So we have a chance now when the ewes are dry to get the condition back on them. So it's important to go actually look through the ewes, and you'll never condition score a ewe looking in over the pen, and that's the one thing I always see with people. You walk into a field of sheep and someone say, geez, the ewes are in great condition, but until you actually put your hand through the wool and feel the back of the sheep, you won't know what condition they're in.
Maybe that's a good chance just to explain again, what are we actually assessing condition score and how do we do it?
So with condition score, we're basically assessing the nutritional status of the ewe, so how much body reserves she has. So in order to do that on a sheep, what we do is we're feeling along the top of the spine and the horizontal bones coming out, which are called the transverse. And where we do that is from the last rib bone back to the hip bone. And it's nowhere else. I know some people be looking top of tail and things like that. No need to. It's from the last rib back to the hip bone. Feel the spine bone there and the transverse process there. And what you're looking for basically is quite simple. When you're running your hand along that, you're feeling for how sharp or how smooth those bones are. So the sharper or the easier it is to pick out each individual spinous process, well then the thinner the sheep. And the harder it is to pick out each of those processes, well then the fatter the sheep. I suppose for mating time, we ideally want our ewes at a body condition score 3.5. So for a body condition score 3.5, those transverse or horizontal bones coming out of the spine, they should be very hard to pick out each of the individual processes. Along the top of the spine, we should just put pressure on it to feel each of the individual spines. And there should be some degree of muscle sitting on top of the ewe at that stage as well.
So we're assessing the body reserves, we're looking for a very good cover across that line area and work towards that 3.5. And you did allude to this earlier. If you get them in good condition, they tend to maintain themselves throughout the year. And if we look at a flock, Frank, we know that the ewes in the flock keep themselves in good condition. You know, we could have an argument there whether they're easy on themselves or not. But there is generally a cohort of ewes there that are struggling, maybe younger ewes once did a good job or once for various reasons. How should we manage them differently?
At all stages, you'll have thin ones that are ideal and ones that are fat. So the thin ones are the ones that I always worry about, because generally they're the highest proportion of ewes in the flock that we need to worry about or to look at, especially this time of year now that we've weaned. As you said, ewes have done a good job or for lost condition for one reason or the other, they need to be pulled up. So realistically, it takes about 8 to 10 weeks to put a full condition score on a ewe. So to bring a ewe from 2.5 to 3.5, you're going to need 2 to 2.5 months. And for them sort of ewes, you need to go through now, pull them out, and they're going to need extra feeding. So something simple as throwing them in with your ewe lambs or in with your ewe lambs that are maybe getting a better do of grass or getting the first pick of grass around the farm, and clearly mark the ewes that are thin now when you're putting them in it. And every couple of weeks you need to be going back in reassessing those ewes, because some ewes will recover, and that's what we want to see, but some ewes will have underlying problems and they'll fail to recover in condition, and realistically they need to be culled. Hard and all as that might be, she might have done a great job during the year, but if she's not able to put condition back on pre-mating, she's going to cause you problems for the rest of the year. So she needs to be marked. Give her a chance. If she doesn't put the condition back on, get rid of her.
You covered a couple of points there. I might just tease a few of them out. Like the period of time it takes to put on that unit condition. You mentioned 8 weeks. Just in terms of physical weight, like if I take a typical ewe is in around 75, 80 kilos, what does that condition unit translate to in terms of actual weight?
So in terms of actual weight, it's about 10 kilos, 10, 12 kilos, but it's varying between the breeds. I suppose the beauty condition score is that it's independent of weight, but you're looking for somewhere around 10 kilos of a gain on weight.
And that kind of gives us the idea why it's taken that long to put on. So it's the same as if you're trying to finish lambs, it will take time to put on. As you mentioned earlier, marking them tin ewes that don't improve. So I suppose the key thing there, Frank, is you take care of any other health issues are obvious, lameness, things like that.
Yeah.
But you did indicate there, like in some cases, ewes won't put on condition even on a good do.
No, they won't. Like some ewes will have other issues going on that will prevent them from putting on condition. And you mentioned the obvious one, something that we'll see is lameness. That would stop you putting condition back on. So if you have lameness in the flock, they need to be pulled out and dealt with. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to regain their body condition score. But once with the underlying issues that are there, they're preventing them from putting on condition. Look, there could be any sort of reason. Hopefully it's something relatively simple, but sometimes it could be an indicator of something more sinister. But the most important thing to do is that if you have those ewes marked and you see that they're failing to put back on condition, well then that's a clear indication that they need to be removed from the flock.
So this is
now's the time to do that.
This is after we took out the obvious ones, the bad teeth and different things.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think your point's valid there. Like, it's not to carry them through for the following year. There is a carryover of going into mating in poor condition, and like we've often relied before, a good do for a couple of weeks, flushing ewes for a couple of weeks on a good run of grass, it'll get as better as can. But you're still carrying a tin ewe.
Yeah, you're still carrying a tin ewe, and the problem is, I suppose, once the ewe is mated, from then until the time you wean her, she's doing a job, or she's doing a process is going on with her. So for the first few weeks, we're trying to mind her. She's out with the rams. We're not causing any major disturbances or issues. Once we get into that mid-pregnancy stage, then we want them to maintain what they have. And I suppose it's probably, we're well into the winter at that stage. So we're not going to want to be pulling off ewes and trying to build them in condition. And certainly then once we get them into late pregnancy, so those last 6 to 8 weeks before lambing, we're going to be trying to feed them for the lambs that are inside them and to maintain condition. If we need to start feeding them to gain condition, that's going to become it becomes a headache. It's an extra group. It's very difficult to do. And realistically, from about 6 weeks out before lambing, ewes aren't going to gain condition because anything they have is going to go towards the lamb. They're only going to maintain their condition. And it all comes down to what we're really feeding for Ciaran is having this condition score right now is when they lamb. And like we get obsessed with pregnancy before or feeding before lambing, and we're right because there's obvious reasons for that. But once the ewe lambs, generally we put her out to grass and we hope that she send her off on her way and hope that she does all right. But regardless of what sort of feed we put her on after lambing, she's going to need to burn back reserves to produce milk. She physically won't take in enough feed to produce milk to grow the lamb. And we know that for the first 5-6 weeks, the lamb is dependent on milk for growth rate. So if we want our lamb crop to do well in early life next year, when it's most efficient, she needs to have at least half a condition score that she can burn off in those first 5-6 weeks after lambing. And we need to get that on them now, essentially, so that they have it at lambing time.
And to bring that in the current context, like, it's going to be cheaper to put on now when we still have grass on farms. And look, we've seen relatively good growth rates in the last couple of weeks. Is to make use of that at the moment and do it. So like the advice there is to go through them, pull off that batch of thinner ewes in it, and give them the chance. Look, oftentimes, Frank, we'll get asked, ewes are very fat or they're over-conditioned. How would you manage them from now to mating?
From now to mating, look, it's probably not my experience is that that's generally a very small proportion of the flock. And I would be inclined to say if it's a very small portion of the flock, just leave them run on with the rest of the ewe flock, and they won't, because they're a small portion, they won't be a major issue. If it's a case that you think all your ewes are majorly very over-conditioned, look, it's very hard to start pulling condition off them without doing damage or to turn them around and I suppose not overly do it on them. So I would say just look at manage them as normal. Certainly don't be giving them an extra do, but try and keep them tipping along as they are.
Thanks very much for your insights, Frank.
No problem, Ciaran. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, getting ewe in the correct condition of joining is important in terms of productivity, both in the direct effects on fertility, but also in the carryover effects the following year on the performance of the ewe during that rearing period. Again, it's something we need to focus on for the coming weeks, and managing those tin ewes separately is one way we can potentially achieve an improvement in performance from our flock on an overall context. I think Frank outlined clearly how we should go about this, and it's a task that we should complete now in a short period because condition, it takes time to put on. That's it for me for this episode. Again, for any updates on the sheep program, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Ciaran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in to future episodes.